Welcome from PCR London Valve. I'm Patrick Serruys and I'm here with Andreas Baumbach, Professor of Cardiology in Queen Mary, and then Juhl Terkelsen, Professor of Cardiology in Serruys. And we have to discuss the concept of intermediate size of valve and extra large. And obviously, we have Meril Life has introduced a new valve, the octa-core, and is very present in London Valve. But we are going to talk about what has been published on the previous valve. So the first question is for Andreas. Why intermediate size is something important? Was that an unmet need for the community?
Well, I do believe that it was an unmet need, and it's not really intermediate size, it's appropriate sizing. So the more we can adjust the valve size to the actual patient size, the less we will see embolization, rupture, the less we will see paravalvular leak, and we will get the optimal hemodynamic outcome.
Okay, so the mismatch. I remember one balloon expandable embolizing in the left ventricle, and I could remember we put an in-way balloon, catch the distal, inflate the distal, bring it back in the aorta and make the employment. So when we talk about, Chris, when we talk about different size, are we talking different balloon in the device, or is that something drastically different?
No, it's actually rather unique. So from Meril, they have provided us with 9 different sizes, and it's unique stent frames for all sizes. So it's not the balloon, but the stent frame that changed by 1.5 millimeters. So you can actually also, in these intermediate sizes, choose the appropriate size.
So basically, in the manufacturer, they are cutting in balloon
in different
sizes. So that's a huge inventory in slide and manufacturing process.
Yes.
Remarkable. So, Andreas, can you remind us what was the step in valve for the surgeon, for other technology, and what is the major step forward here?
Yeah, so here we've got 1.5 millimeter. The standard valve iterations or sizing for transcatheter valves is 3 millimeter.
Yeah.
So that's double that. The surgeons, they work on 2 millimeter differences.
Right. And I think that if you look at the millimeter square, okay, the large will be 700 to 860, but I think it's interesting that there is always some kind of overlap, so you can eventually play a little bit on the downsize of upsize. That's very good. Now, Chris, you have the responsibility to summarize a little bit the published data. What is the incidence of use of that intermediate size?
So previous publications indicate that if you have the possibility to choose intermediate sizes, you would probably choose it in around 40% of cases. And from our own experience, we have implanted more than 600 valves from MyValve and octa-core in Western Denmark. So when you have the possibility, we actually choose intermediate sizing in 1 out of 3 patients. So in a situation where with a 23 you would undersize and with a 26 you would heavily oversize and there's maybe a risk of annulus rupture, you have the possibility to choose an intermediate size. And this you will do, from our experience, in 1 out of 3.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think that the paper we published with Kawashima was 2021. We look in 26 countries in Europe. We had something like 11, 25 patients, and the incidence at that time in 2021 was already 42%.
Yes.
So it confirmed what you do in your institution. If you look the connection with the bicuspid, is there anything you could say? I remember in that paper that with the bicuspid there was also some nice interaction between intermediates. Anything you would like to say on that, or that you know?
I think we, from our clinical experience, we tend, of course, to not oversize so heavily with the bicuspid. So there could be several cases where you wanted this intermediate sizing for the bicuspid to avoid the risk of rupture also.
And the presence of calcium, asymmetric calcium, is that also playing in your choice of intermediate?
Certainly. I mean, there's a risk that you won't expand the stent properly if you take the larger size and if you take the volume out. So in these cases, we would certainly also choose an intermediate if that was the appropriate sizing, yes.
So it's a reality, it's used in
Yes.
42% of the patient. Andreas, do we have any sign of clue of indices showing that it will improve the clinical outcome?
Well, we don't have hard data yet, but there is a wealth of data coming in from 2 randomized trials to compare, and the landmark trial, which will complete enrollment of nearly 800 patients fairly soon. And there we will not only have the outcomes of these patients, but also compare the outcomes to the standard sizing with 3 millimeter iterations.
So when is this data going to be released, you think?
Well, we hope that we will be presenting the landmark data at EuroPCR.
Oh God, that's good news. I mean, a new appointment of meeting where we will hear this information. Let's finish on the extra large size, 30.5 and 32. Anything that you would like to say? I remember a paper of Alzheimer with a short series of only 10 cases, by the way.
Yeah.
But what would you say about this extra large, maybe your experience?
I think we all have seen patients where we cannot treat them with the previous commercially available valves. And there's a nice paper by Andreas Baumbach from Regensburg where he looked into more than 2,000 previous TAVI cases. And he could actually see that in more than 2% of cases, the patients could not be treated with the previous available valves. I think this is different from country to country. Mm-hmm. So our own experience is probably the same. Around 2% of patients, we need the XL sizes, so the 30.5 and the 32. And in some countries, it may even be higher. There are rumors that in Netherlands, it's even larger anatomy. So we now have a valve where we can treat patients that were previously denied for TAVI.
Right. So you mentioned the experience of, I think, the University of Regensburg.
Yes.
But I think that in the technology of Medtronic and Edwards, they mention also 1.7, 2.8% of valve annulus, which is beyond what they can offer. Mm-hmm. Very good. So the last question is maybe for Andreas. What about what kind of data are we going to get and how soon we are going to get data on these extra large?
It's early days, but there's definitely a need and people are requesting the valve and implanting it. We have a nested registry in the landmark trial and the registry will continue. So we are at 31 patients out of 100 planned. We might exceed the 100, but once we come to that point, we will release data and show acute and follow-up outcomes.
A lot to see, a lot to hear in the near future. I thank you both, gentlemen. That was to the point of these 2 new developments in the field, which are quite unique, we have to say. Thank you very much. Back to the studio.